And here I want to share with you one of the most famous experiments in psychology, the Milgram obedience study, to show how authority makes us do things, even things that make us feel uncomfortable. This experiment took place in early 60s, led by psychologist Stanley Milgram. His goal was to answer a troubling question. To what extent will ordinary people obey authority, even when the orders go against their wills and moral values? Milgram's inspiration came from World War II. He wanted to understand why so many ordinary people could participate in atrocities under Nazi Germany authority. The experiment was staged inside a psychology lab at Yale University, and the lab was arranged to look highly professional and scientific. The real experimenters from Milgram's lab are the authority figures. They sat in the room wearing lab coats with clipboards in their hands. The real participants were given the role as teachers. They sat in the middle of a large electrical shock generator. It had 30 switches labeled from 15 volts all the way to 450 volts, with warning signs like slight shock, danger, severe shock, and finally XXX. The learner is actually an actor. He sat in an adjacent room, strapped in a chair with electrodes attached to his arm. The teacher and learner were separated by a wall. The teacher couldn't see the learner, but could hear the learner's response after getting electrical shocks. Either it's a complaint, a protest, shouts, begging, screaming, or eventually silence. This separation was crucial. It made the setup feel real, but also made it easier for people to obey. The rule is simple. Whenever the learner gave a wrong answer, the teacher had to press a switch to deliver electric shock. The voltage went up step by step. As the shock intensified, the learner cried out in protest, "I have heart problems." He would bend on the wall in distress and eventually fall completely silent. At this point, many teachers grew visibly distressed. They would turn to the experimenter and say something like, "I don't want to go on. Who's responsible if he's hurt? He's not answering. Maybe he's unconscious." But the experimenter, calmly sitting in the same room, would respond with firm prompts. Please continue. The experiment requires that you continue. It's absolutely essential that you continue. You have no other choice. You must go on. Only if the participant refused all 4 prompts would the experiment end.
Cloud, horse, rock, house. Answer. Wrong. 150 volts. Answer, horse.
Oh. Experiment, that's all. Get me out of here. Get me out of here, please.
Continue, please. Go right on.
I refuse to go on. Let me out.
He refuses to go on.
The experiment requires you continue, teacher. Please continue.
Participants didn't know that the learner was really an actor and the so-called shocks harmless.
You're going to get a shock. 180 volts.
Oh. I can't stand the pain. Let me out of
You
here.
can't stand it. I'm not going to kill that man there. I mean, who's going to take the responsibility if anything happens to that gentleman?
I'm responsible for anything that happens here. Continue, please.
The outcome shocked the whole world. 65% of participants went all the way to maximum 450 volts. Every single participant reached at least 300 volts. Even though many were sweating, trembling, stuttering, and some even suffered seizures, most still continued to obey. Milgram ran many variations of the study. He found that certain factors strongly influence obedience. Symbols of authority. When the experimenter or the authority figure wore a lab coat, obedience was high. When replaced by an ordinary person, obedience dropped dramatically. Location. At Yale University, obedience was high. In a rundown office, it was much lower. Proximity. The closer the teacher was to the learner, the less likely they were to obey. Social support. When peers refused to continue, most participants also dropped. Conflicting commands. If 2 authority figures give opposite instructions, almost nobody continued. This experiment has been heavily criticized because participants was deceived in believing the shock were real. They were subjected to intense stress and anxiety. Their right to withdraw was not clearly protected. Informed consent was incomplete, and debriefing was sometimes delayed. Despite these issues, Milgram's experiment actually had lasting influence. Later replications under more ethical conditions still found high level of obedience. Cross-cultural studies show that obedience remains widespread across societies. It shows that situational factors, the legitimacy of authority, the setting, the peer pressure, the procedure, play a powerful role in shaping our choices.